I'm Haley Taylor, and you're listening to the Rough Draft Diaries. This week on the Rough Draft Diaries, we're revisiting an episode from May of 2017 with Imani Lateef. He's a comic book artist, owner of a digital comic book website, and now a comic book teacher.
I'm not sure if I would have imagined myself here 3 years ago, but now I've been teaching comic book classes. I've done all ages, like for teens and also adults. I think I approached the Art Supply Depot in downtown Toledo first, so it's kind of a leap of faith. I thought I could at least, share a little bit of what I've learned with them, and that really took off.
Imani reached out to the Art Supply Depot just about 2 years ago. He's been giving comic book lessons ever since, with the Art Supply Depot, but also with the Art Museum, the Toledo Library, and Owens Community College. With the ongoing issues regarding quarantine and social distancing, these classes have been moved online, which actually benefits Imani, as anyone who has an internet connection can now join the class.
And interestingly enough, that summer camp I did with the Art Supply Depot, half of those kids were actually outside of Toledo. So I had some kids that were zooming in from Atlanta. I think they told me somebody was as far as California. By going virtual, I've actually expanded my audience a bit. In a weird sort of way, I've been learning as I go as well. A lot of the stuff I'm showing them is just the basics of how to, compose a story. A lot of what I'm showing them, I'm sort of leaving to their imagination and, learn on their own. So I'm teaching them how to tell a story or compose a narrative.
Unfortunately, the narrative surrounding Black authors and artists creating Black comics for a Black audience hasn't changed all too much since our last conversation. Here's Imani in our 2017 interview.
Why is it so hard to find Black comics? What I have found is that these comic book shop owners, most of them aren't willing to take the risk on not just Black comic books, but a lot of independent books, period. So it doesn't help that, Black comic book creators are in a niche, within a niche.
But there has been some change. In 2018, Sony released a new incarnation of the Marvel comic book character Spider-Man, a new animated film called Into the Spider-Verse. There are 3 directors of this film, one of them being African American, and the main character, Miles Morales, is half Black, half Puerto Rican. The film was incredibly successful, receiving praise from both critics and audience members. It won the Oscar that year for Best Animated Feature as well as the Golden Globe. It was the first non-Disney Pixar film to win an Oscar for Best Animated Feature since 2011. Although the creation of this film and its reception is a step forward, Imani believes that there is still a long road ahead.
It's so weird. It's like I'm asking for it to be a certain way, but at the same time, to be honest, I know that I personally, as a fan, will probably never be satisfied. It's so weird. It's like, and I can be a bit of, a skeptic when it comes to stuff like this. And so, I really enjoyed Into the Spider-Verse, but I'm always looking at it like, well, they could have did this better, or why was certain things the one way? I'm always, thinking it could be better. But I am enjoying the different things that are coming out from different studios. At the same time, I think this moment is also a moment for people that aren't necessarily a part of the larger market. Like, I have adults asking about comics and how to make comics. So I'm thinking about, people like that, those people being able to get their stories.
Now that Imani is teaching classes, he's affecting the future industry even more than he could have imagined. He's possibly teaching the future generation of comic book creators. And through that process, he's also learning himself a lot about his students, but again, about the future of the comic book industry as a whole.
As far as what I learned from the kids, it's sort of like I'm learning more from them as to what they are into and what they're reading. And I noticed that I might be caught up in the whole conversation about what the major, big 2 are publishing and stuff like that. But I'm learning from kids that they aren't reading those books. They're not concerned at all with what those publishers are doing. They're watching anime and reading manga, and they're telling their own stories. They're like, their time is consumed with what they want to do. And I think that's the thing that has amazed me the most, is that as much as I grew up around comic book shops and, you know, reading the X-Men and all those popular comics. And I've learned that this generation of pop culture fans have a very broad, you know, perspective. That's encouraging from a creative standpoint to know that I don't have to make the next Spider-Man or the next, you know, Batman to be popular. I could do something that's a little different.
So it looks like teaching is going to be a permanent fixture in Imani's career, which he fully embraces, as it's almost become his new name.
It's interesting. I was just at an event for Juneteenth. Several times people came up to me and said, "Oh yeah, you're the comic book guy." So it's almost like I'm trying to lean into that narrative and become more and more the comic book guy, more visible as the comic book guy here too.
I'm Haley Taylor, and thanks for listening to this episode of the Rough Draft Diaries.